Shalom, my friends. Welcome to weekly Parsha with Yehuda Yisrael. This week's Parsha is Parshat Chukat or Chukas, and this is the infamous or famous red heifer, right? The Para Aduma, which has been making the news very frequently in the past few years. So, let's get into this Parsha. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is a statute of the Torah which the Lord commanded. Speak to the children of Israel and have them take for you a perfectly red, unblemished cow, upon which no yoke was laid." So very specific standards for this. "And you shall give it to Eleazar the Cohen, and he shall take it outside the camp." Eleazar. Whenever I see this transliterated. Eleazar. "And he shall take it outside the camp and slaughter it in his presence." It's confusing because Moshe has a son named Eliezer. So when you see it. So Eleazar the Cohen shall take from its blood with his finger and sprinkle it in front of the tent meeting 7 times, and the cow shall be burned in his presence, and its hide and its flesh and its blood and its tongue he shall burn it. And the Cohen shall take a piece of cedar wood, hyssop, and crimson wool, and cast them in to the burning of the cow, and the Cohen shall wash his garments and bathe his flesh in the water, and he may enter the camp, and the Cohen shall be unclean until evening. So that's kind of the enigmatic aspect of this, is that it's used for purification, but when it's done, it makes the Cohen impure. The one who burns it shall wash his clothes and cleanse his body in water, and he shall be unclean until the evening. A ritually clean person shall gather the cow's ashes and place them outside the camp in a clean place, and it shall be as a keepsake for the congregation of Israel for sprinkling water used for cleansing. So that's this idea of, that's why a lot of people who critique, I guess, the Temple Institute for doing any sort of red heifer ritual is that you need the ashes from the previous red heifer. The question is, do we have them, right? And in the times of the future Messiah, the presumption is that we will somehow gain access to them. The question is, maybe they already exist somewhere. I don't know. These are questions I don't have the answers to. "The one who gathers the cow's ashes shall wash his clothes, and he shall be unclean until evening." Okay, so he also becomes unclean, but he was clean at the beginning. So yeah, you see this kind of ironic clean, unclean relationship. "It shall be as an everlasting statute for the children of Israel and the proselyte who resides in their midst." So you can also see why this is important, is that the idea is that this will be restored because it is an everlasting statute, just like the priesthood is an everlasting statute, as we discussed in last week's Parsha. "Anyone touching the corpse of a human soul shall become unclean for 7 days." So that's why this is linked to the future Messianic era, right? This red heifer is because that's comes with the reinstatement of the Levitical priesthood when the temple is rebuilt. So you can argue, are people jumping the gun on this? I don't know, but fine. The idea is that this will be something that will come back when the true Messiah comes. "And on the 3rd and the 7th days he shall cleanse himself with it, and he shall become clean. But if he does not sprinkle himself with it on the 3rd and 7th days, he shall not become clean. Whoever touches the corpse of a human soul which dies, and he does not cleanse himself, he has defiled the Mishkan of the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from Israel." So that's why it's important for the purification if we're touching dead bodies. "For the sprinkling water was not sprinkled on him, so he remains unclean, and his uncleanliness remains upon him. This is the law. If a man dies in a tent, and anyone entering the tent and anything in the tent shall be unclean for 7 days." Okay, so that space in there will not be clean. "An open vessel which has no seal fastened around it, or any open vessel which has no seal fastened around it becomes unclean." Okay, so this is making sure that things are sealed. That's a practical, sort of thing. "Anyone who touches one slain by the sword, or a corpse, or a human bone, or a grave in an open field, he shall be unclean for 7 days. A lot of these are just practical, right? You don't want to get diseases. "They shall take for that unclean person from the ashes of the burnt purification offering, and it shall be placed in a vessel filled with spring water." Okay, there you go. A ritually clean person shall take the hyssop and dip it in the water and sprinkle it on the tent and all the vessels and on the people who run it and all the people who touch the bone and the slain person, the corpse, or the grave. And the ritually clean person shall sprinkle the unclean person on the third day and then on the seventh day, and he shall... This is a, kind of redundant process. And he shall cleanse him on the seventh day, and he shall wash his clothes and bathe in water, and he shall become ritually clean in the evening. If a person becomes unclean and does not cleanse himself, that soul shall be cut off from the congregation, for he has defiled it. Okay, once again, defiled the sanctuary of the Lord, and sprinkling waters are not sprinkled upon him. He is unclean. This shall be for them as a perpetual statute, and the one who sprinkles the sprinkling waters shall wash his clothes, and one who touches the sprinkling waters shall be unclean until the evening, right? So we don't have a functioning Mishkan, functioning temple now, so it's presumed that everybody is unclean as the state is today. But of course, once again, when the Messiah comes, when the priesthood is reinstated and the temple service is back in function, then these laws will apply. Whatever the unclean one touches shall become unclean, and anyone touching him shall be unclean until the evening. So that's why it's important to learn these, because in the future they're going to be relevant. The entire of the congregation of Israel arrived at the desert of Zin in the first month, and all the people settled in Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. And then this is very significant. It links it to, and the congregation had no water, so they assembled against Moses and Aaron. So the idea is that there's this concept of the well of Miriam. And the well of Miriam was this miraculous water source that they had in the desert. And it's actually referenced, ironically, in the New Testament, believe it or not, which validates the oral Torah that was even understood within the realm, like a midrash that was understood even by the New Testament authors. This is something I learned years ago that was fascinating to me. I forget exactly where it is. Maybe I could do a separate video if you guys are interested. But yes, the well of Miriam, which is a midrash from the Talmud, is also in the New Testament. Obviously, I don't believe in the New Testament, but you know what I'm saying. It gives credence to the idea of the oral Torah, which we know to be true. This is an interesting part here, right? So it says Miriam died there. Why is the passage relating Miriam's death juxtaposed with the passage of the red cow? To teach you that just as sacrifices bring atonement, so the death of the righteous secure atonement. So this is why I don't make the argument against Christians that, there's no one can die for another person's sins, because that's not exactly what Ezekiel is saying. He's saying that I can make a video about it, but the idea of the death of the righteous atoning for sin exists in the Torah. It exists in the Tanakh. It's a concept. The problem is when the New Testament authors argue that the only way for atonement, salvation, forgiveness is through the death of Jesus dying on a cross. We have alternative means of doing that. Yes, it's true that the death of the righteous can atone for sin, as we see here, but it's not the only way. And Jesus obviously is not the only way for anyone to receive salvation, atonement, or forgiveness. So that's where the New Testament gets it wrong. But no problem in the theory of the death of the righteous atoning for sin on some level. So the people quarreled with Moses, and they said, if we only had died with the death of our brothers before the Lord, they're saying, it would have been better for us to die. Wow, how insulting. Why have you brought the congregation of the Lord to this desert that we and our livestock should die there? Why have you taken us out of Egypt to bring this evil, to bring us to this evil place? It is not a place for seeds, or for fig trees, or grapevines, or pomegranate seeds, and there is no water to drink. And Moses and Aaron moved away from the assembly in the entrance of the tent of meeting, and they fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared before them. So this is the infamous part where everyone is frustrated. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, take the staff and assemble the congregation, you and your brother Aaron, and speak to the rock in their presence, so that it will give forth its water. And you shall bring forth water for them from the rock, and give the congregation and their livestock to drink. So this is the infamous part where Moses is instructed to speak to the rock so that it will bring forth water. In the past, he was instructed to strike the rock I forget which Parsha it was, but now the command is slightly different, which is why I kind of empathize with Moshe in this moment, where, as the infamous moment will happen, so Moses took the staff from before the Lord as he had commanded him, and Moses and Aaron assembled the congregation in front of the rock, and he said to them, "Now listen, you rebels, can we draw water for you from this rock?" So he's angry, and Moses raised his hand and struck the rock with his staff twice, when an abundance of water gushed forth, and the congregation and their livestock drank. So it wasn't exactly how God told him to do it this time. So it says, because the first time he drew out only a few drops, since God had not commanded him to strike it, but you shall speak to the rock. However, they spoke to a different rock and nothing came out. Oh, interesting. Okay. Perhaps we ought to strike it as the first time. Oh, okay. So actually, the Rashi explains the same thing that. So it was from Exodus 17:6, right? Okay, interesting. So they were rationalizing that that was the time because God commanded them to do that before, that this would be the same way. So yeah, this is something that honestly I can feel for Moses a little bit here, But at the end of the day, this was, God holds Moses, the greatest prophet who ever lived, to a higher standard than us, you know, the common man. So the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Since you did not have faith in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly to the land which I have given them." Pretty harsh punishment, right? It's hard for us, in my case, it is a little bit hard for me to comprehend that that would be the punishment, but you got to understand that Moses and Aaron were at an extremely high level and God has very high expectations. So that's their punishment for not talking to the rock instead of hitting it. These are the waters of dispute. Well, you could argue maybe because of the anger that was through it. The waters of dispute Meribah, where the children of Israel contended with the Lord as he was sanctified through them. Okay. So moving on to the next aliyah. Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. "So says your brother Israel, you know of all the hardship that has befallen us. Our fathers went down to Egypt. We sojourned in Egypt for a long time, and the Egyptians mistreated us and our forefathers. We cried out to the Lord, and we heard his voice, and he sent an angel." Ooh, it's an anonymous angel. Christians want to claim this as a pre-incarnate Jesus angel. All that silliness. Eisegetically, but we know better. "And he took us out of Egypt. And now we are in Kadesh, a city on the edge of your border. Please let us pass through your land. We will not pass through fields or vineyards, nor will we drink well water. We will walk along the king's road. We will turn neither to the right or the left until we pass through your territory." We're not gonna mess with anything. But Edom replied to him, "You shall not pass through me, lest I go out towards you with the sword." So, okay. Not well received. The children of Israel said to him, "We will keep to the highway, and if we drink your water, either I or my cattle, we will pay its price. It's really nothing. I will pass through on foot. We're not going to mess with anything." But he said, "You shall not pass through." And Edom came toward them with a vast force and a strong hand, and Edom refused to allow Israel to cross through his territory. So Israel turned away from him. Well, that's a shame. So they traveled to Kadesh, and the entire congregation of Israel arrived at Mount Hor. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron at Mount Hor, in the border of the land of Edom, saying, "Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not come to the land which I have given to the children of Israel, because you defied my word at the waters of dispute, Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar, his son, and ascend to Mount Hor. Strip Aaron of his garments and dress Eleazar his son with them. And Aaron shall be gathered to his people and die there." Wow. So Eleazar is given the big day kahuna. The clothing of the high priest, who was previously Aaron, but now is actually, I'm confused of the chronology of when he became high priest, his son Eleazar, but regardless, perhaps this is when that was happening. Moses did as the Lord commanded him, and they ascended to Mount Hor in the presence of the entire congregation. Moses then stripped Aaron of his garments and dressed Eleazar his son in them, and Aaron died there on top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar descended from the mountain. The whole congregation saw Aaron had expired, and the entire house of Israel wept for 30 days. Wow. Very sad. Aaron was the first high priest. The Canaanite king Arad, who lived in the south, heard that Israel had come by the route of the spies, and he waged war against Israel and took them as a captive. Israel made a vow to the Lord and said, "If you deliver this people into my hand, I shall consecrate their cities." The Lord heard Israel's voice and delivered the Canaanite. He destroyed them and consecrated their cities, and he called the place Hormah. They journeyed from Mount Hor by the way of the Red Sea to encircle the land of Edom, and the people became disheartened because of the way. The people spoke against God and against Moses. "Why have you brought us out of Egypt to die in the desert? For there is no bread, no water, and we are disgusted with this rotten bread." The Lord sent against the people the venomous snakes, and they bit the people, and many people of Israel died. This is a very significant passage because it's actually quoted in the New, or paraphrased in the New Testament, concerning this copper snake. We'll keep reading. The people came to Moses and said, "We have sinned, for we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord that he remove the snakes from us." So Moses prayed on behalf of the people. So once again, forgiveness, atonement, without the need of blood. So the Lord said to Moses, "Make yourself a serpent and put it on a pole, and let whoever is bitten look at it and live." So Moses made a copper snake and put it on a pole, and whenever a snake bit a man, he would gaze upon the copper snake and live. The irony here is that this same copper snake is, I think it was called Nehushtan in the book of Kings, and King Hezekiah smashed it because people were offering incense to it and worshiping it as an idol, as a god. So too, as the New Testament says, that just as the people looked upon the copper snake and gazed upon it and were healed, so too the Son of Man, aka Jesus, is raised up. That analogy is fitting because of the fact that it is worshipped as an idol, this copper snake. And once again, I think it's in 2 Kings chapter 18. I think that's where Hezekiah comes on the scene and smashes the idols, including this copper snake idol. Okay, so ironically, the New Testament compares Jesus to this idol, which in my opinion is ironically fitting because I believe that worship of Jesus is idol worship. So that's in line with what God warns against in when we get to Deuteronomy chapter 4. So, or he's, of course, idol worship is obviously a prohibition, and making an analogy to a copper snake and Jesus is, well, it's quite ironic. So, if you want to make that analogy, I forget what book of the New Testament it's in, but anyway, it's quite telling. So the children of Israel journeyed on and camped in Oboth. They journeyed from Oboth and camped in the wasteland, passes in the wilderness, which faced Moab, toward the rising sun. From there they journeyed and encamped along the stream of Zered. From there they journeyed and they encamped on the other side of Arnon, which was in the desert, extending from the Amorite border. For Arnon was the Moabite border between Moab and the Amorites. Concerning this, it is told in the account of the wars of the Lord, what he gave at the Sea of Reeds and the streams of Arnon, and the spilling of the streams that turned to settle at Ar and leaned toward the border of Moab. For from there to the well, that is the well of the Lord, said Moses, gather the people, and I will give them water. And Israel sang the song, Ascend, O well, sing to it. A well dug by princes, carved out by nobles of the people through the lawgiver with their staffs, from the desert a gift. From the gift to the streams, and from the streams to the heights, from the heights to the valley of the field of Moab, at the top of the peak that overlooks the wastelands. Let's go to the final aliyah. Israel sent messengers to Sichon, the king of the Amorites, saying, "Let us pass through your land. We will not turn into fields." That's the same narrative, right? "Nor drink water. We will walk along the king's road until we have passed through your territory." But Sichon did not permit Israel to pass through his territory. And Sichon gathered all his people and went out to the desert toward Israel. He arrived at Jahaz and fought against Israel. Israel smote him with the sword and took the possession of his land from Armon to Jabbok, as far as the children of Israel. Ammon, the border of the children of Ammon, was strong. Israel took all these cities, and the Israelites dwelt in the cities of the Amorites and Heshbon and all its villages. For Heshbon was the city of Sichon, king of the Amorites, and he had fought against the king of Moab, taking all his land from his possession as far as Arnon. Concerning this, those who speak in parables say, "Come to Heshbon, may it be built and established as the city of Sichon." For fire went forth from Heshbon, a flame in the city of Sichon, and it consumed Ar of Moab and the masters in the high places of Arnon. Woe is to you, Moab, for you are lost, people of Chemosh. His sons he has given over as refugees, and his daughters into captivity to Sichon, king of the Amorites. Their kingdom is destroyed from Heshbon. It has been removed from Dibon. We waste as far as Nophach, which is near Medibah. Israel settled in the land of the Amorites, and Moses sent them out to spy out Jazer, and they captured its villages, and driving out the Amorites who lived there. And they turned and they headed toward the Bashan Og. Okay, the king of Bashan, right? There's a lot of interesting midrashim about him, that he was one of the Nephilim, that he was like on the Ark of Noah. Very fascinating. Very old, I guess. He lived for a very long time. Came out toward them with all his people and to wage war on Edrei. The Lord said to Moses, "Do not fear him, for I have delivered him, his people, and his land into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Sichon, the king of the Amorites, who dwells in Heshbon." And they smote him, his sons, and all his people, until there was no survivor, and they took possession of his land. The children of Israel journeyed and encamped in the plains of Moab across the Jordan from Jericho. So that was Parshat Chukat, or Chukas, however you pronounce it. I hope this video has been a blessing to you all. Shalom Aleichem.